Hello, and you're welcome to day 5. So today's reading sort of reminds us of God's covenant and faithfulness, the importance of honoring and blessing that follows obedience. So after the flood, God blessed Noah and his sons and instructed them to be, fruitful, they should multiply. This God began just bearing children, everything goes on. He confirmed his covenant and then that he made with humanity and ensure that all things are going the way they should go and away. So that will never again destroy mankind by flood. Well, let's move on. Well, God's plan was deliberate. It was protect Noah. It was, ensuring that his family and all the creation of the earth was sort of preserved and not just destroyed. And we saw the story of Shem and Japheth, and it teaches very important lesson about honoring and consequences of dishonoring. I see that from that story. I see that Japheth was honored, you know, Shem was gloriously honored. In fact, his lineage was where Jesus came from, and Am was actually armed because his generation were armed, and it became a problem to the Israelites, who was sort of was through the Shem's lineage. Well, the point is one person's action can affect the future generation. By contrast, Shem and Japheth acted honorably and they were blessed. You know, Shem's line became a path to Abraham and ultimately to Jesus, showing that God's plan continued through faithful obedience. Genesis 10, 21 to 24, Matthew 1 to 16. So the key lessons is that responsibility and honor is very important. Our respect for others, especially within family, shapes legacy. Blessing fully follows righteousness, humility, integrity, and obedience often results in personal and generational favor. So God's plan persists. That's number 3 now. Even after the destruction, God's purpose continue, always continue through those who follow Him faithfully. He never stops. So human diversity has purpose, and it has promising purpose. The descendants of Noah's sons populated the air, demonstrating that the differences in culture and opportunity do not hinder God's plans. They work in different ways. So, and choices have consequences. Whether small decision, big one, a small decision with its characters and the impact. So I'm going to Psalm 5. It highlights God's ears are prayer and it's evil and all of those that relationship with God, praying for God to answer. And Proverbs talks more about sexual purity, focusing on what the Lord has put on wait for the right time. So you can have your own wife and you drink from your well. Don't go and drink outside of a marriage. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. So sexual purity is very important. Very important. Teaches sexual purity, drinking from one's well. Let our breast satisfy you. Yeah. Urging us to remain faithful to our spouse and then avoid temptation of, drinking from other world. I'm come to Matthew 7, one of my favorite verses, I think, is in there. It's a God reminds us that we should examine ourselves before we start judging others, and we should try as much as possible to recognize that not everyone who calls on the Lord will enter God's kingdom also. We have to have discerning spirit. Only those who obey and these so if you have people who talk about God, preach the word, but don't do what the Lord says, they are false, just like they are false prophets. So think about that. Teaching and obedience is very important. It brings stability. Disobedience invites, collapse. And in that Matthew 7, 7, it says, ask, you will receive, seek, you will find. knock and you answer. It means we serve a very good father who cares for us, who loves us, who looks after his own children. And bringing it to the last one, which is Matthew 8. Well, it's a very powerful example of faith and compassion. See the Jesus when he the leper was a leper. And I said, "Oh, Father, you can." Jesus, you can heal me. Say, "Are you willing?" Yeah, I'm willing. You're healed. That's all. And then you see the Roman officer too miraculously say, "You don't need to come to my house. You just say the word," and at instant was saved. And look at also Peter's mother-in-law. You see, she was having fever, cold, and on the bed. Couldn't do anything. For one touch with Jesus, Kai, she stood up and went to go and prepare food for Jesus. So who will you touch? God can touch you and you start becoming useful for the kingdom's work. So these accounts show us the power of faith, the cost of following Christ, and also the authority of his word. So my reflection question. God reminds us of Grace Covenant, Trade Rainbow, and some other promises. So, what are the other promises from God that I can cling on to today? Allah is faithful. Yeah, whatever I do today has consequences tomorrow. Whatever He has promised today, He has promised my next generation. Meaning that if He has chosen to bless me, He will bless my next generation. He has blessed them already. So God has to say it with obedience and contentment. And for obedience part of it, you see that clearly in the life of Shem and Japheth, and then we see because and in fact, I would say in the life of Noah itself, if he didn't obey a lot, those children wouldn't have survived. And it's been a different story. That was a big yawn, I'm tired. And for contentment, in Proverbs, it speaks so much about contentment. And then now, in what areas of my life, your life, can we start practicing obedience and embrace contentment? Just live within your tones, Jojo, focus on what matters. You know, believe in God, trust in God. You don't try to help God. Obey and trust Him that He's going to do the best. So, and the last one is how can I honor my spouse and family? Protects what God has entrusted me for. Understanding them, it can be challenging, but understand them, speak nicely, be empathetic. I don't know what it is for you, but I think creating more time to connect is very important. Well, so in conclusion, obedience honors God, contentment guides the heart, and faithfulness brings God's blessing, just as the rainbow remains a visible reminder of God's covenant. So let's live our life to reflect His promises through integrity, humility, and trust in His plan. Drill from your own well. Yes, drill from your own well. Manage that little thing that you have and enjoy it. So nurture what God has given you, shine and be faithful, multiply it, increase it. And I'll say faithful witness in your home, in your work and community. God will bless and honor you, just like He will to your next generation. And if you're doing otherwise, He will to your next generation. So be wise.